You're welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be looking at an example of a research report. How to rate a research report. So we said when we are rating a research report, the first thing we have is the preliminary pages. And the first page is called the cover page. And this possesses the name of the organization, the topic, the name of the researcher, and all that. So first is the title of the research, the change in the Australian workforce since the end of World War II. That is the title of the research. Then it was prepared by, like you read the name of the person, it was prepared by Nambasa. Then preparation for tertiary studies course, Victorian University of Technology. This is the name of the organization. Preparation for tertiary studies course, Victorian University of Technology, the name of the lecturer, you rate it there, or the supervisor. Then the date, 2nd September 2001. This is the cover page, what we call the cover page. It includes the topic of the research study, the name of the organization, the name of the researcher, the name of the supervisor, and then the date of submission. Then there is also what we call an abstract page. An abstract page, it summarizes what the report is all about. So the summary of the report. This report discusses the changes that have occurred in the Australian workforce since the end of World War II, 1945 to 2000. A review of some of the available literature provides insights into the changing role of women and migrants in the workforce and the influence of new technologies and changing levels of unemployment have also been considered. So this is a summary of the report. Then you can also summarize the key findings. The key findings of the study include there has been a marked increase in women participation in the workforce, particularly that of married women, since their men went to World War II and they never came back, most of them. So they had to wake up and work for themselves. Then while immigration was encouraged in post-war Australia as a way of providing labor for new industries and major projects, the migrant population continues to experience a high rate of unemployment in low-skilled jobs. So they also summarize the key findings of the study as you can see them. So that is the summary page. We are still on the preliminary pages. Then we also have a page of the table of contents. This indicates the chapters and subchapters of the research study. So the table of content, summary, the summary is on page 2. Then introduction is on page 4. The findings are on the findings that were on page 2. Part 1 for women's workforce participation rate will be found on page 5. Then the finding of migrant workers participation rate will be on page 6. Then the finding of employee categories will be on page 7. The finding of unemployment and demographic factors will be found on page 8. Then the conclusion is on page 10. Recommendation is on page 10 also. Reference list, it's on page 11. Then appendix. Employment by industry 1970. It is on page 12. So this is the table of content. It shows the chapters and sub-chapters of the research report. So we start with introduction, because we said when we are writing a research report, the first thing we write is, after the preliminary pages, we go to chapter 1, which is introduction. Yeah. Chapter 1, which is introduction. So we introduce the report. The profile of the Australian workforce has altered since the end of World War II. Australia has transformed from a nation of predominantly Anglo-Celtic culture and almost full employment to one of rich cultural diversity with relatively high unemployment. This report examines ways in which our workforce has changed, focusing on the following categories: women's workforce participation rates, migrant workers' participation rates, employment categories, unemployment rates, and then demographic profiles. This report will also consider new influences affecting the workforce. This report is an accessible component of the preparation for tertiary studies course at Victoria University of Technology. Yeah, so this is the introduction, and under the introduction we state the methodology. Information of this report was sourced from various secondary sources, all listed in the reference list. Data from publications by the Australian Bureau of Statistics also proved variable. This report is not a comprehensive review of the available literature but provides a broad view of the topic. Then we said under the introduction we also raised the scope of the study, and this includes the subject scope, the geographical scope, and then the time scope. Yes, so the scope of the report: wherever the term workforce on its own is used, it's in reference to the Australian workforce. Where the information refers to a particular state, this will be noted. The period under consideration is 1945 to 2000, so this is the time scope. Yeah, and they told us where the term workforce is used on its own, it will be meaning the Australian workforce. So the geographical scope is Australia, then the time scope is 1945 to 2000. Yeah, although where available data does not cover the entire period, this is stated. The report focuses on several key aspects of the Australian workforce, and is not a comprehensive account of all changes that have occurred in the workforce since World War II. So this is what we call the subject scope. The report focuses on the several key aspects of the Australian workforce. Yes, so the scope of the report, it shows the subject scope, it shows the geographical scope, and then the time scope. Yeah. Then findings. Findings, we talk about the findings, which is chapter 2. Chapter 2 in this report is findings, but in our research format here, our chapter 2 was literature review. Yeah, so here they first talked about the findings. Women's workforce participation was the first finding. Migrant workers' participation rates was the second one. Employment categories, unemployment and demographic rates. So their research findings is also known as processing, analysis, and then data presentation. It represents the processing, analysis, and data presentation, because they already put literature review and then research methodology in the introduction. Yeah. Then we have the conclusion. Conclusion is a summary of written in all other chapters. Yeah, the Australian workforce has altered greatly in the 55 years since the end of World War II. Many of these changes have been very positive, such as the growth of women in the workforce, the formation of many new employment categories, and the introduction of migration to cope with the time of great industrial growth, which has in turn enriched our culture. So it's a conclusion, it's a summary of what was found out, it's a summary of the findings. Yeah. Then recommendation you recommend. The information collected for this report provides a broad overview of the key changes in the Australian workforce. Further analysis would be possible if the relevant data for each year from 1945 to 2000 was purchased. So this is a recommendation. Further analysis would be possible. You're giving them the possible ideas or possible solutions. Further analysis would be possible if the relevant data for each year from 1945 to 2000 was purchased from the Australian Bureau of Standards. The reliance on secondary sources has resulted into some patchy data. For example, it's not possible to identify for any given year a breakdown of the Australian workforce by the following categories. Yeah, because they used secondary data, they were not able to find out some information. Yeah, so in order for them to get all the information that they need, they have to purchase the primary data from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Yeah, so they were not able to find out the breakdown in the following categories: unmarried Australian born women, married Australian born women, unmarried, and all that. Yeah, so that is the recommendation. Greater access to primary data would enable more thorough analysis to be made. Yeah, so they need to access primary information. Then, under our chapter of recommendation and conclusion, we also have references. Reference is an acknowledgement of the source of your study. Yeah. So we said when we are rating references, we use the American Psychological Association format. When we are referencing, the first thing you write is the name of the author. So here it's the Australian Bureau of Statistics, then the date 1997, the title of the book, Australians, Employment and Unemployment Patterns. The period of publication 1994 to 1997, ABS, this is the place of publication, something like that. Yeah, then another reference is the Australian Bureau of Statistics. You first write the name of the author, then the date 1999, the title of the book, Yearbook Australia 1998, ABS, that. Yeah, so that is how we rate references. We use the APA format. Yeah. Now this one, the name of the author, Game A and Pringle R, the date 1983, the title of the book, Gender at Work, the title of the article, George Allen and Unwin Australia, Pty Limited. Then the place of publication is North Sydney. Yeah, that is how we rate our references. Then we said we also rate appendices. Appendices refers to the relevant attachment to the research report. Relevant attachments to the research report. Yeah. So the attachment to the research report is the employment by industry 1970 to 1999, percentage of the total employment. Yeah, so this is what was attached to the report. Agriculture and mining with the employment rates. In 1997 it was 9.6%, 1975 it was 8.2, 1980 7.8 and all that. For manufacturing with also the employment rates and all that. Yeah, so this is the appendix that was attached to the research report. Yeah. An attachment to the research report is what we call the appendix. So this was an example of the research report. Yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, share with your friends, and this has been the end of business research skills. Thank you.